My dad gave scholarships to some teachers, teachers who would come back. For example, Honorable Tito Taremara, civil society is a political organization, but has interest in politics because it's part of community, it's part of society. Generally, the Rwandan civil society is believed to be weak, whether before the war of 1994, genocide against Tutsi, whether now. We need to define ourselves. We need to strengthen our constituency, to know who we are. But RGB needs to recognize that there is no civil society organized. They have to realize that platform does not represent civil society and challenge us more.
Hello, everyone. My guest this week on the Long Form podcast is Annie Kairaba, a civil society expert. Annie is the founder and executive director of Rwanda Initiative for Sustainable Development, RISD. We discuss her personal journey, as well as the state of Rwanda's civil society, the cause of its never-ending wrangles, and the role that civil society plays in Rwanda's development agenda. Before this episode starts, I want to make a deal with you. About 85% of you who watch this podcast frequently haven't yet hit the subscribe button. If you enjoy what we do here, here's the deal I want to make with you. If you hit that subscribe button, I promise you that we will keep making the show better and better in every single way. I hope you choose to come along with us on this journey. Now let's get into the show. Annie, welcome to the Long Form.
Thank you very much, Sammy. Very nice meeting you. Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we get into the hard questions of civil society and everything that goes around that topic, I'd like the listeners and the viewers to have a better sense of who you are as a person. So I'd like us to start with the most basic question, which is, what was your upbringing like? What was your childhood like? And what were the situations that created the person that is sitting now in front of me, who decided to found a civil society group? What exactly, because when you think about it, when you were a child, very few children, when you're talking to people in primary school, very few will say, oh, I want to start a civil society group. They'll say, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a farmer, I want to be a policeman, I want to be a soldier. What about your life brought you to this place right now?
Thank you very much. And that's a very, very interesting question to ask because I reflect on it. And recently I was actually wondering, how is my narrative like? I started writing. I haven't finished the book, but I started writing to talk about my life. But I reflect a lot, and I realized that who I am today actually started in my childhood with my parents. I grew up as a refugee in Uganda, and I was lucky that my dad was a teacher. So he liked to get together, to bring together children. And we grew up in an environment of Christian. So my dad, while setting up schools in refugees in Uganda, in Nakivari.
Oh, that's where you were. That's where you were. Is that where you were born in Nakivari?
Yes, and grew up. And so I grew up looking at children. And at home, we would always be taught two things: to pray and to study for our future. And our dad used to remind us all this. And we grew up with many children. So in our neighborhood, we loved people. And because we are near a hospital, near schools, we hosted many children, many adults coming to our home for delivery at the hospital. So we grew up with people. And this made me love people and like people.
Before you continue, when were you born?
In 65.
65.
Yeah.
And your parents, had they gone to Uganda that time, or were they part of what they call the old caseload refugees who first fled Rwanda in 1959?
The old caseloads who were already who fled in 59 to Uganda.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, as we are growing up, our dad played a very big role in terms of advancing the youth. As I say, we are growing up with different children, and we grew up knowing about our future. Our dad insisted on that. So while in Uganda, we grew up in that environment, and as I was growing up, I started realizing who I am as refugees, being taught how to work very hard. So my dad, even my mom, taught us to work very hard. We had models in the school. So my dad gave scholarships to some teachers, teachers who would come back. For example, Honorable Tito Rutaremara, Narcisse Musabeyezu, Dr. Karimera. So these would go and come back to teach us and give us some ideologies.
That is so interesting. So let's talk about your father. So how is this man who's a teacher, as you say, but he's also a refugee, he's living that refugee existence, how is he getting scholarships for these young Rwandans, these people that you've just mentioned?
Oh, yeah. There was an arrangement that as they came to Uganda, they started mobilizing. Actually, because he was working with the church, he was asked by the missionaries to organize these schools. So he worked with some missionaries, including Bishop Sharita, someone called Karai. I came to know as I was growing up, Penelope Karai. So all these people were asking him to bring together children and then organize with other schools. So these are the ones who were offering scholarships. And he would be able to work with the school to identify the people who need scholarships. And I think strategically, he looked at the adults who would go and study about education, come back to teach. And as he was growing up, growing old, he was leaving these people to take over from him. I remember Tito Rutaremara, when he came, he became the headmaster, and my dad was not a headmaster anymore.
What school was that called?
Gashorwa Primary School.
Gashorwa
Yes,
Primary School. Okay.
Gashorwa Primary School.
So Mzee Tito was a headmaster
yes,
once?
He was a headmaster once.
Interesting.
He knows most of us. Then was replaced by Honorable Narcisse Musabeyezu. I think that time Honorable Tito also went back for study. I don't know what happened, but they were exchanging like that. So we are growing up in hands of those people, and my dad was growing up, but still he was giving knowledge to these people. So anyway, as I was growing up, I went to Kenya also for studies. So, but I found my sister there also as a refugee. So I joined the humanities. I studied humanities while I was in Kenya.
Was it university?
In Nairobi. Yeah, in Nairobi University. Yeah. So while there, after I graduated, it was very interesting. We were looking for internships, and I happened to get the internship with the World Bank.
What year was that when you graduated?
I think this was, do I remember it very well? I think this was in 85. Yes, 85. Yeah.
So you graduate from the University of Nairobi with a degree in the humanities.
Yeah.
So now, but you're still obviously a refugee, and now you're trying to make your way through life.
Through life, exactly. So the first internship I got was with the World Bank, and while I was working there, I met. I was dealing with papers. People have not worked with the World Bank. It's a elegant place, but you miss out something. You don't meet people, but you meet papers. You meet numbers. So I jumped into writing for other people, the researchers. I was still very junior, what they are doing. So I would be very tired at the end of the day, but the only people I know is my desk, is the people I work with. But I'm reading about Kariobangi, I'm reading Kapsokoni, but I've never seen these people. I don't go there. So I kept on thinking, I'm missing to see these people having the background of humanity. And there was a lady, the American lady, Dr. Ruizbach, that I was working with. And I think she was an agriculturist. She was writing a lot. Most of the work I was doing was for her. And she got a job with CARE International, but to work at the regional office as expert. Because they had, in Kenya, CARE had 2 offices. One was the regional office, and then the CARE International office. The CARE International was more local. The regional office was experts, advisors. So Ruizbach got a job there. And she asked me, oh, Annie, do you want to join CARE regional office? Do you want to come with me as my assistant? I said, of course. I was still young, and I wanted, to change, to see new things. So we went together. And while in CARE, I saw opportunity. I started going to the field. And that was really how I became interested in the development work, which I'm doing today. How I came to now like to be introduced to civil society, to NGOs. And I translated the theory into practice. Yeah. So if we talk about need for water, if we talk about conflict areas, then I would understand. If we talk about environment, I would understand. I would visit some areas. So I picked interest in NGO work like that. And while at CARE, I think after like 2 years, because I joined CARE in 88, I was there until 90. So in 89, I got something very, very interesting that I interacted with. When I joined, although I was local, I was working with international, but I was local. Because once you're a refugee, you become local, you joined on local terms, you're not international. So I worked with another lady, Kenyan, Mildred Okumo from Rwanda, and I interacted in 1989. I met some people, Rwandese, who were from RPF at that time, but I didn't know that they were actually from RPF.
Who are those Rwandese?
So this was Ambassador Ben Rutsing. Of course, that time he wasn't ambassador. He was a teacher at what was that called? What's the school called? Not Mary. I'm forgetting the school. The school, what it was called. And then there was Ambassador Zeno Mutimura. So they contacted me to help them type out the RPF 10 program document. It was handwritten, so they wanted it typed. I knew them. I said, okay, just
Did you know what you were typing?
No, at that time I didn't know.
So
but as I was reading, they asked me, can you help us type this document? So as I was typing, reading, I came to see and I was becoming interested. But I didn't really think it was a dangerous document at all or suspicious. Anybody would be inquisitive about it. So when I finished, I photocopied because I realized that these people who have asked me to type, probably they don't have also a photocopying machine. So I photocopied for them a few copies and put them in my desk. And somehow I went out. So this Kenyan girl became curious. And of course, as I joined, she was a little bit older than me. And I was kind of, I think dynamic, working hard, who had come with Ruizbach, had a lot of energy. So she picked and saw this. She saw some political things. And that time in Kenya, it was becoming sensitive on political, and you were inciting people. So she took it to these people in the regional office and reported me that I'm inciting, my bosses at the regional office, that I'm inciting Kenyans with the politics.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what was happening, but I looked for my documents. I don't find them. I became sensitive. I panicked. I said, anyway, whoever has them will bring them. I didn't look for the people who asked me to help, Ambassador Zeno, Ambassador Rutinga, tell him. I just kept quiet. So towards the end of the day, I'm called at the director's office. The director was a South African in the Kenya office. So he calls me. He tells me, "Are you familiar with this document?" I said, "Yes." "Why did you bring it to the office?" I said, "Well, it was my personal work. I was doing it in my private work, my private time." He said, "Yeah, but you are being accused that you are inciting Kenyans with Rwandan politics."
Before you continue, it would seem strange for me. You know, I work with many people. I've worked with many people, and I've never even once wanted to look into people's private documents or cabinets. Is there any reason that you think that Kenyan woman would have suspected you and had the curiosity to now go into your, was it a rivalry? Did she just dislike you? Why would she do that?
No, I imagine, I don't know, but I could see that when I came anyway, I was like a threat to her because she would always get, warnings and what. I think it was just about threat, and I think also she started out of curiosity, but by reporting, I think it was out of that threat, probably. But it happens. All human beings, we're all different. Anyway, so, but it ended well, as I'm going to tell you. So, anyway, I'm told that I have to be suspended immediately. So, in that suspension, I was really confused because this was a good job. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't look for it. Getting jobs is not easy. It was not easy even that time. So I thought, but they told me, I'm going to keep on my salary. Not going to lose my salary. Anyway, so I think of what do I do with my time. I decided to go for driving school because my dream was to have my car.
So, I want to know something now before you continue. So that document that you were supposed to type out for Rutsinga and Mutimura, what happened to it? Did they give it back to you? Did you give it back to them? I'm sure that those two men were very, very confused. They asked you to do something. They were probably expecting the document in maybe a day or two. Now all of a sudden, there's no document. What happened?
Yeah, I tell you what diplomacy in RPF does.
Yeah.
This director of care, the South African, had more contacts with these people than I did.
With the RPF?
Yes, with RPF than I did.
How did you know?
Because when he got the documents, he immediately got hold of them and looked for them and gave them the documents.
So even while they were suspending you,
yes,
he had already given the documents?
Yes, had already given away the documents. So, but me, I didn't know. But I think he advised them also not to contact me, to leave me alone. Probably he thought I was going to speculate and the information would go. So they were doing their own things. At that time also Ambassador Rugema Mike was involved, but I didn't know at all. Yeah. So for me, I was struggling with my job. Them, they were struggling with their politics. Yeah. So they were playing their games. I was here. Anyway, while I was at home on suspension, another American guy working with the region, but based in Washington, D.C., writes asking for my time to help in organizing a workshop in Uganda. And these people from the regional office blindly accepted that I can help.
So they send you to Uganda?
So they prepared, they informed the director that I've been asked to go and provide support in care office, in the regional office, but in Uganda.
This is 1990?
This is...
or is it 89?
89.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I go to Uganda, I spend 2 weeks there. I think that's when even there were some weddings happening. Yeah. So I got there, spent 2 weeks. I'm earning very big money that I could never have ever earned if I stayed in my job. I'm earning my salary. And at the end of the workshop, I come back, wrote it, and I'm asked to go back to the office to see the director. And there is a meeting. They had made a decision. He had already made a decision, contacted these people at the regional office and said, look, you've ended this issue now because someone who is on suspension cannot be given assignment in the same organization. So Annie has to come back and take up her job. That's how the saga ended. So I came back, took up my job, got my money from the workshop, and it ended. So it's then I was being told what happened, how the RPF officials got involved, how they thanked the head of the mission of care, how he supported them, and all that. But that meant me really now realize who I am as a refugee, how I should be involved. So at that time, within a short time, I was also, that time I wasn't RPF, but then they recruited me to be RPF member at the time. I didn't go into deep politics, but they maintained me in relations, networking and relations. And yeah, so, and they gave me an interesting name.
What was your name?
Ndabaga.
Ndabaga.
Ndabaga. I think you know what it means.
Yes.
Yes, means even when things get too difficult, even girls come in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they put me in meetings, you know, to go for meetings and all that. Until after some time, I became interested again. You know, when you work with NGOs, there is a move, there's always a nudge to do better. So the head of the regional office got a job with ActionAid. And they advertised for some openings and said, would you like to apply to come? So I applied for the advisor to the director in ActionAid, and I got a job. So I'm moving from care, moving to ActionAid, and I keep running how NGOs work, because I had never worked with NGOs, with the World Bank internship. Then I come to NGO, then I see the change. I see the difference from World Bank with numbers, with papers, to NGOs with human face, with translating the action, the literature to action. So in ActionAid, I even got more and more involved. And that time, of course, I was there until 1994, towards the end of 95. I was leaving in 95. So I kept on getting involved with what's happening with the Rwandese. So it became obvious with the war. And interestingly, in 94, when it ended, we started coming to Rwanda, visiting, and yeah, at that time there was already a plan of me going to UK to work in the ActionAid UK office.
Really?
And that was my first time also to go to Europe. So I was excited about it, but for two reasons. One was to go and make people understand in the UK what UK is about, how liberation is, how things work. And that's how I ended now in UK. But before I moved to UK, it was interesting scenario. Towards the end of 94, there were refugees, new case roads. You talked about old case roads and new case roads. There were us who were old case roads, and there were new case roads coming to Kenya as refugees of 1994. And having been working with international organizations, there were people coming in for support. And one of those people who came is Afande Stanley Sabimana. He came to ActionAid to ask for support for jobs. I think he was looking, he's a professional guy, So I think he was looking for possibility of placement, or I don't know. I can't remember what he was looking for. But we made contact. So because people in Action Aid knew me as a Rwandese, they brought him to me. So we had a chat, and I told him he was a soldier from former regime of Habyarimana. He was open. He was really nice. And I said, so what do you want to do? He said, well, I don't know, but I love my country. I would love to go back. I said, can I put you in touch with some people who can help you go back? I thought he wasn't going to agree, but actually he agreed. And apparently he came back through those contacts, and we've remained in touch. So I found that really interesting, the future of Rwanda, how Rwandese would be able to work together, the old case roads, the new case roads, and it's today what is making Rwanda, how people interact, the old case roads, the new case roads. So anyway, I went to UK to work with Action Aid, and while I was there, I met with Ambassador Senga, who was the ambassador of UK at the time, of Rwanda at that time, and we chatted, and he told me the challenge here in Rwanda, that it's about the government understanding really how NGOs work. And the understanding that time was, when they say civil society, the understanding was NGOs. Even today, most people think that NGOs are the civil society. I think we shall talk more about even the civil society itself, how it understands. We have here what is called the Rwanda Civil Society Platform, but it's made up of NGOs.
Yes. So let's before that though, I'd like to ask you one question. So you went to the UK. What was that experience like? Did you enjoy it?
A mixture. First of all, when I arrived at the airport in UK, I expected someone to meet me at the airport at Gatwick, like we used to meet people from UK to Kenya, and Kenya was a smaller airport, but there was nobody. I arrived on a Saturday, so I called emergency number. It is responded by the head of emergency, who was the deputy director, Nigel Toss, and he says, "Oh, Annie, most welcome to UK. Unfortunately, nobody would meet you on arrival." And I was wondering, my God, where am I going to move? How am I going to move? I didn't know even how to read a map. I said, "Well, you have a map, so you can go to this hotel where you are booked." I said, "Where I have to do," but I went. When I stepped out of the airport, I was being told as I prepared to travel that it's winter, that I should be prepared for winter, but I didn't know what winter is like. So when I stepped out of the airport, I felt something very cold. I thought it was water. I thought they were pouring water on me, but it was wind. So I didn't know what really winter. I said, "Where?" I screamed. I thought I'm going back, where I tried to go back, to move forward. And then I looked for a taxi. And the tax was for an Indian guy. So I said, what's happening? It's too cold. He said, "Yes, that's what it is like." He said, "Why are you not wearing gloves? Why are you not wearing a hat? Why are you not wearing a scarf?" I said, "I didn't know in Africa we don't use them." He said, "We are not told." I said, "I was told, but I didn't know it's as cold as them." So he was very kind. He took me to the hotel and he said, "Well, I'm going to help you to get you warm stuff," and all that. Yeah. So that was first experience I didn't like. And in my mind, I said, when I reach the office, I'm going to demand that any African that come to UK first time to Action Aid would be picked like we do it in Kenya. And the following, that was on Monday when I went to the office, that's the first thing I told them. And luckily enough, they accepted that whoever comes to Action Aid from Africa first time would be met. So That was the first influence that I made when I was there. But generally, it was good. People were coming, apart from the weather, and I learned a lot. I think within the office, what I went to learn is how much people understood about Rwanda, very little. But the lesson I got from there also was that it's better for people to learn from here than to learn from there. I thought I was going to learn more about Rwanda, but I realized I'm learning more when I'm here.
Yeah. Now, thank you for giving us, a bit of a background. Now, I want to go into the meat of today's discussion. Now, let's talk about civil society. It seems like it's for me, when I think about that word, it almost encompasses everything. But sometimes when something encompasses everything, therefore it also encompasses nothing, because it's not it's not concrete. So maybe for us who don't really understand what that word means, civil society, can you help break down that term? And secondly, in Rwanda, we like to talk about our uniqueness, our ubudasa. Is there something that you believe makes Rwanda's civil society different from any other civil society anywhere in the world?
Thank you very much for that question. In fact, I have a passion for civil society. Just take back, when I came here, after realizing what is on the ground, and I had been asked to help in understanding the state of Rwandan civil society, I picked interest in myself going back to study. So I went to do my master's in Dublin, specifically looking at civil society. And I did my research. I came back here in 2002 to do research on the relationship between government and civil society in a post-conflict setting. And it gave me an opportunity to learn, to read a lot about the civil society, things that I didn't know. I looked at the civil society itself, what it means, different terms, descriptions. If you ask how civil society is described, there is no single description of what civil society is. Different people give different meaning, description. For me, I took the one of Aaron Fowler, which says that civil society is a political organization, but has interest in politics because it's part of community, it's part of society. So the issue of civil society being non-profit, non-political, become diluted because every human being has interest in politics, and as I started saying, in one way or the other. So that's the description that I buy into, that civil society is not supposed to be political, but has political interests because of the work we do. We cannot support a community, we cannot work with the government without really interest, being aware of what is happening in the country. So ubudasa, the uniqueness of the civil society in Rwanda is not there at all. Actually, there is a lot of misconception. That's what I would say. Before the war, generally, the Rwandan civil society is believed to be weak. Whether before the war of 1994, genocide against Tutsi, whether now. But the weaknesses are different. The weakness in the pre-1994 was intended, caused by the government, caused by the international community, because at that time, the government dictated everything. Every part of community was managed by the government. So there was no civil society, including the media. You've heard of Kanguk and all these, who were there just to channel the news just of the government, but not of the society. So there was no education. Everything was government.
So maybe help me understand. So when you talk about civil society, does that include, for example, the media? Does it include labor unions? Does it include religious organizations? Or is civil society just NGOs? I think that's maybe a lot of where the confusion lies.
Okay, so civil society is all these institutions, labor unions, community-based organizations, media, religious groups. All these are part of civil society.
So then why do they
civil
say...
society organizations are those organizations which are not part of the state, and private sector also at times come in between civil society and the state.
So if I can, why did you then say that civil society was weak in Rwanda before the war and even after, before the genocide and even after? Yet we had the Catholic churches, we had the Liprodors and all these organizations that are quite well known. How is that possible that they could be weak yet also existent at the same time?
Yes. Because civil society is supposed to be in between. It's not supposed to be part of the government. It's supposed to be between the society or the community and the government. So the civil society then didn't manage. It went on one side.
It went
they
on
became
the government.
part of the government. So that's why the people who have analyzed the civil society then, who have written about it, say it was weak. The Catholic Church was very strong. The Liprodor, the human rights groups were very strong, but on the side of the government, supporting the policies and the doings of the government, especially when it reached to time of genocide. They became part of. That's why people went to church, hoping for safety, and they were killed in the church. Liprodor, they were among people who were reporting the people to be killed. So they were the ones who were making the lists of people to be killed. So that's why they say that civil society then was weak, because they never questioned the government. And today, in a post-conflict setting, we are still trying to define ourselves. We don't know our constituents, because there is a tendency to believe that civil society in Rwanda is just NGOs. In fact, the current law that was passed for NGOs, it says the NGOs law. I will not go into discussing it very much, but it has created more confusion, because it says this is NGO law, but it should be of public interest law or civil society law, because it has encompassed all these community groups, sports groups, all these, and they're all called NGOs. So it shows the level of misunderstanding. The previous laws were clear: the NGO law, the local NGO law, and the international NGO law. But this current civil society, as in civil society, I think we make the situation even more confusing. Before, like soon after the war, in fact, there was some understanding. When I was doing my research on civil society engagement, there was a big hope. In 2000, I finished my research in 2004, and I came up with good results of a big hope, because you'd see independent reports, you'd see independent organizations, thematic organizations, and you would see a common voice saying, civil society in a post-conflict setting doesn't have to be, or doesn't want to be aggressive, is promoting dialogue. instead of being at loggerheads with the government, which presented a big promise, not only for Rwanda, but as a model of how civil society in post-conflict setting should be to promote dialogue more than confrontation.
So,
and you could see thematic areas that, yes, please.
So where did it go wrong?
Where it went wrong was when, I don't know, but in 2003, around 2002, there was a new move by Catholic Church, in fact, which was positive also in a way. They started an organization called POWER. It's French, but it means organization that support civil society or NGOs to engage, to monitor elections, which was good, which was a project on its own. So, and this project identified some umbrella organizations like CSYB, ProFarm, and all these, brought together about 12 organizations to monitor elections, which was okay. But later on, this project was to self-appoint itself as a representation of the whole of civil society in Rwanda. And these were NGOs only, few, not even reaching 1% of all organizations registered in Rwanda. And they registered. I don't know where Minarok was looking, Minister of Local Government, to accept. It called itself Civil Society Platform. And they forgot that civil society encompasses many, media, trade unions, all these are not there. And it doesn't even have all NGOs. It only has some umbrella organization.
Are you part of it?
No, I'm not part of it. Not because probably I don't like it, but because I don't qualify, because it's umbrellas. It's umbrella organizations. So my organization, RISD, is not umbrella. It's a single organization. So automatically it doesn't qualify, which means it's not part of civil society.
So wait. So as you've said, civil society is apolitical groups that almost work for political ends. You obviously, as a RISD, are doing things around land, and that land, of course, in Rwanda is the most political of political topics. How is it possible that there's a platform that calls itself, the civil society platform, that you are not a part of? And I'm pretty sure, as you've said, it seems like it's like a very small group that doesn't really encompass everyone. How does it come into being?
I would ask you why you are not. You are in media.
Yes.
You are not part of it.
No one has ever asked me to be a part of it.
Same, we're not asked. In fact, even when we try to ask, it's blocked. So, but this is where now the civil society, this is where the civil society destroys itself. The current civil society in post-conflict setting in Rwanda, where we destroy ourselves. Because we've changed the whole meaning of civil society. The civil society platform, and it has been accepted legally that it represents civil society. It's actually embarrassing. I was looking at the recent elections where the president and his party, RPF, spent a lot of time, resources, campaigning for legitimacy. And the civil society platform does not see that it's necessary to have legitimacy to represent civil society. They just...
So who's the head of that platform?
They just finished elections. Yes. I don't know the name of the person who is there now.
So you, as a veteran civil society player, you, one, are not represented. Two, don't even know who your so-called leader is.
No, there are many who don't know. Because this is like really a closed... I don't know, by the way, when I think about it, I don't think they realize what they are doing or what they have done. It's just a name, the civil society platform, but it has been kind of legitimized in many places. The former chief executive officer of RGB, recently when we were discussing about this new law, told me, why don't you become civil society? I said, Madam, what does it mean? Why don't you become civil society? Meaning, why don't you become part of platform? So the understanding is, for you to be civil society, you have
to be part of a platform.
Part of this platform. Yet the platform is so enclosed for a few umbrella organizations. So there is a need to educate. When I went to UNDP for a meeting, and I was talking about this law to do with expropriation, and we are talking about how the different organizations can get together so that we can discuss about this expropriation law, given their role of UN, because I realized there is a need to educate people about expropriation, because there is also a lot of misunderstanding around this, what it means. Yeah. And then I was told by the head of UNDP, like, why don't you go through platform? I said, what does platform know about expropriation?
I feel like, whenever I read, I'll go through the newspapers, and there always seems to be a certain level of antagonism and conflict in, unfortunately, civil society. There's always what we'd like to, Kinyarwanda, you call it amachimbirane. There's always an argument, and even now, you're bringing it up again. Why is there so much antagonism? You are the civil society groups like yours and organizations should be showing Rwandans how to live together, how to work together for a common purpose, right? The government is already doing that. It has created programs. It has the Ndi Munyarwanda, Ndu Munyarwanda, all these initiatives to create a sense of unity and a sense of purpose, united purpose. Now, you, not necessarily you as Annie, but rather you as these so-called civil society groups, instead of showing us the power of unity and that purpose, you're actually showing conflict and bitterness and confusion and, unfortunately, even corruption. Now, here's the question that I want to ask is, what's next? Why is it happening? Is it because that, my thinking sometimes is that, people start these organizations not for a purpose of changing lives, but rather pocketing some free money from the West? Is it because of that? Is it because people enter, civil society and the NGO world with the wrong thinking? Is it, lack of training? Is it human greed? Why does it always seem like you're either fighting between yourselves, or sometimes you're fighting with government? It's always, there's always a sense of confusion and conflict. What needs to be done? First of all, do you agree with me that there is a lot of conflict and unnecessary things? Secondly, if you do agree with me, what needs to be done to have civil society, to have the NGOs of Rwanda working for the greater good of our society?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, as I mentioned during my research in 2002, I happened to attend a workshop. That was the only one that was talking about civil society in Rwanda. And they had invited some academicians from, international. And it was organized by a commission that was in President's office for civil society. They used to have a commission for civil society. And most of them, it was dominated by people from the University of Rwanda. And because I was doing my research, I was co-opted in this one. And I had the opportunity of asking His Excellency in that meeting, because I was looking at when the government was talking about civil society, it meant the international organization. So I was fighting for local organization to have a space. So I approached him, I said, sir, what can be done for this space of Rwandan civil society to be brought back so that it's not encroached on by international? He said, what else can we do? We have given you everything. We have given you legal instruments. We've given you the political will. I felt challenged. And I came back saying, this is in our hands now. We should really do something. Although I went back, but when I returned in 2004, I really focused on building the capacity of civil society, and there was still a hope. So what we need to do now, I've listened to the leaders of civil society platform, even the outgoing, the speech of Joseph.
Who's Joseph?
Joseph DRC, who was the chairperson for, I think, about 6 years here. And he was saying, in the platform, we always have disputes. It's not really all civil society, but the platform. And the one who was leaving, the deputy, in his speech also said the same, that in the platform, we have had challenges, we have had difficulties of disputes. So in Kinyarwanda, they say, umukobwa w'umwaga tukisha bose. So I think it's really about this platform and its lack of legitimacy, what it's doing, and the whole confusion. The new law itself shows it, actually. Although I said I'm not going to go through it, but it's the first time we have a law that guides NGOs that has a big section on managing disputes. And here we are asking ourselves, why should a law be developed with anticipated disputes? So, from my thinking...
But then obviously it's because even me as a journalist, over the years, it's been known that there are conflicts. You know, there are always leadership conflicts, management conflicts, issues with corruption, sometimes even genocide ideology within civil society. So obviously, if I'm now thinking on behalf of government, if I'm creating a law for NGOs and civil society, of course I'll have to put in place clauses for conflicts, because that's been our experience.
Exactly. I very much agree with you on that. But in the next step, you asked me, what do I think should happen? One, I think there is, first of all, even this law that is being developed is a speculation. We need to have a policy. We need to have a policy on civil society. We need to have a policy on NGOs to understand the question you are asking, who is in civil society? What is civil society? How should we engage? In my view, this civil society platform should be as inclusive as possible. We open up so that we all give views, we think about ourselves. Before the platform was actually introduced, there was no disputes. I never had any disputes among civil society organizations or among NGOs. I picked some very healthy partnerships between international organizations, among local organizations. People used to get together, work thematically. So I think, in my view, if I had the powers today, I would demolish or dissolve the civil society platform.
As it stands today.
As it stands today, create one that is inclusive, that includes all. The current law gives us opportunity because it's one law that brings both international and local organization, and that's what is happening in most of the parts of the world, that in the country, which bring together local and international, they all have one forum. So if we would have one forum, work together, look at thematic areas, think about ourselves, have many trainings of self-analysis, really, who we are. The government is ahead of us. In fact, in my research, on relationship between civil society and government in post-conflict setting, the government is always ahead of us. In RPF especially, is ahead of civil society. That's why we are even ignored. We are not even taken, we don't mean much to government, to be very honest. I've asked some officials, like, why don't you give thought? Why don't you give weight on the position of civil society? They say, well, we have a lot to do. Really, it's up to you to do it. So we need to define our constituency. We need to have our position. I would only seek to media to feel also, because in most cases, media also feel it's not part of civil society. So we need to define ourselves. We need to have to strengthen our constituency, to know who we are, so that we are not, our narrative is not given by others, but is given by ourselves. We have failed to give our narrative. You talk about the issue of corruption and of influencing. Peter Owen describes very well about the current Rwandan civil society that is built on financial interests, is built on competition and fighting over small
so
funding.
do you agree that our civil society right now is being built on those issues?
Yes, because I did a research recently. I just finished it. I haven't yet released it, but I completed. I interviewed people from civil society, from government, from both international and local, and I got the same answer of how we define ourselves, like high competition, high...
Competition for what?
For anything. When we talk of competition, one will think only of resources, but even programs, even doing better, who has done better in face of the government, in face of donor, fighting over donors. So the competition is very high. The intrigues are too deep. We are part of, in fact, for me in this research, I realized we are taking back our society. Our society is moving ahead in terms of peace building, working together, whereas in the civil society, we are becoming more and more divided. So we need to do something about it.
Let's talk about, now that we've kind of gone through what's wrong with our civil society, what we can do better, I want to give you an opportunity to actually do the job of civil society, which is to speak on behalf of those that you say you represent. Because fundamentally, organizations such as yours are supposed to be the voice, our voice to government, speaking on our behalf. So I'd like to hear your thoughts, Annie, as a leader in this space on one of the hottest issues happening as we speak, and that's the issue of relocations of people because of that the issues around high-risk zones. Right now in Kigali, the mayor had a press conference maybe 2 weeks ago when he was letting people know that, as we now enter the rainy season, where we've been having issues, with landslides and everything that goes around that, and they've been telling people that you might need to relocate from some of the places that you've called home for the last 10, 20 years. Obviously, land relocation is always very emotional, and it also very often becomes very political as well. I'd like to ask, as running civil society, when you do speak to the government, I'll say this issue of relocation. We've heard from the Baturage themselves, the citizens, how they feel. I've heard from our political leaders, whether it is from the Ministry of Local Government or even the city of Kigali, but I've not actually heard from civil society. What are you, when you hear the news, when you see what's going on the ground, when you're meeting donors, when you are talking to government, what is your stand on, for example, the land relocation, the relocations?
Yeah. No, thank you very much. In fact, you are touching on an issue that, as my organization, RISD, we are working on a lot. We have also a network of about 35 organizations who work together, running it on land issues. And this relocation is not in isolation. We've done a lot of work on this. It goes with urbanization. So our country is going through urbanization, and we like it, we promote it, because it's part of development. But we question on how it's done, because it touches on compensation, it touches on resettlement of people. So we are discussing with the Ministry of Infrastructure. We are discussing with, we have actually a partnership, an MOU with the City of Kigali, specifically on this, on how to manage the relocation, how to make it inclusive. The policy of the government actually is very good on resettlement and relocation of people. They insist on inclusivity, but always the policies do not translate into practice when it goes to implementation. So this is where we are putting emphasis. How can government achieve the implementation of the beautiful policies that have been put in place? We've worked on one area in Nyarugenje, Agatare, where we gave an example of relocating people, where the government was working with, the State of Kigali was working with the World Bank on relocating people, and 65 people were going to be relocated. The State of Kigali itself asked us to go in and see how to talk to the community. And in the end, only 15 people had to be relocated because of including people, inclusivity, looking at the priorities. Because when you're moving people, different things are being considered. This one of high-risk zone, most of these areas have actually been mapped. In the State of Kigali, there are about 10 sites that have been mapped for relocation. I think 3 years ago, when many people were moved from Banyahe, His Excellency asked, we should ask people why it has taken this long. The problem is it takes so long to actually act, and people start talking about it when there is emergency, like now the rainy season. So most of it is to do with budget, because the government doesn't have budget. They have also to look at who can support these programs among donors, or even the budget itself for the government. And it's a tricky area, this relocation. For example, the World Bank, EU, they say we can only work on infrastructure, but or upgrading, but we are not going to pay for the compensation. And this becomes a big challenge for the government, how to move people. This is why there are cases in courts. That's why it becomes really very tricky. And we're engaging now with the government, with the donors, to see how can this be a more of inclusive process. The movement itself is for a goodwill, but how to do the implementation is normally the issue.
So let's talk about donors, because you brought them up. There's a saying, an English saying that goes, "Who pays the piper calls the tune." So it's in that vein I would like to talk about the relationship between foreign money and its impact on Rwandan civil society. Let me just ask you a very blunt question. Is our civil society being controlled by foreigners?
I would say to some extent, and to some, where donors would say, this is what we want to do here, and people apply for the funding based on the interest of donors. Others would say, this is what we want to do. Would you be able to support this? I'll give you an example. For about 4 years now, as an organization, we've not gotten funding from any donor because we've put forward our priorities. And we haven't gotten a donor who is interested. One of the priority areas has been the civil society position, to streamline the civil society position. And no donor wants to touch it. And we are saying, well, this is our priority now. The other one is about expropriation and compensation. So the donors, the World Bank says, no, we don't touch compensation. EU says, we don't touch compensation. So these are things we are discussing. But they are these ones they call the proposals, call for proposals. And people apply. There you are dictated by donor. Because the donor says, here is my money. If you want to take it, take it. If you don't want, you don't take it. In other countries, like in Senegal, Ghana, the civil society control the donors. They put up priorities of the country. They work with the government and they present an envelope to the donors to say, for these 3 years, this is what we see as the priority. Can you develop a program based on this?
So why do you allow that? Why do you Rwandans, we're very proud. We're proud people. We have our agaciro, our sense of worth. But then what you've actually told me right now is that civil society works without any real agaciro. They're doing everything possible to get funds, even if it's not in the best interest of the people that they want to support, the Rwandans. How do you allow yourselves to be put in that position? Why can't you fight back?
This is what I was talking about from the beginning. The question on civil society platform and its position, how it has undermined this initiative, that civil society platform won't position itself and want to listen, and donors will try even to go to civil society platform and will ask, if you approach them to guide, they say, civil society platform. So what is lacking within us, which the government has, is collaborative efforts, is planning together, and civil society, we are not able to work together. So this is what we need to do, work together, have a framework that brings us together. This is what is lacking. Because RISD will think on their own, others will think on their own. The platform itself, as I mentioned, it was created based on the interest of funding, based on the interest of a donor. So they will look at, even now when they talk, they say, what the amount of money I have raised. They are not talking about the policy I have influenced, the kind of policy I have influenced. So we need to change. This is really a big war, and it has to be all civil society. It will not be only NGOs.
Now, I'd like to ask you my last question, and it's more of a regional nature. So right now, there's a huge conflict taking place right on our borders in Eastern DRC. And this conflict has created a refugee crisis. It has created the conditions for the monkeypox epidemic. It's killed millions of people. Now, unfortunately, it would seem that Congolese civil society groups, such as one that's very well known, Lucha, instead of playing a positive role in creating conditions for peace, it's actually they are creating instances of further violence. Now, I'd like to talk about I'd like to ask, okay, if on the other side we are seeing civil society, Congolese civil society, increasing the drumbeats of war, what is the Rwandan civil society doing to actually help reduce regional tensions and foster peace?
Again, it comes back to the same question. I actually, in most cases, feel embarrassed that we are not doing anything about this. All the talks about Rwanda's involvement and all this, and we have not yet really come out as civil society to meet and try to understand the situation. So all these are impacts of us not really being able to work together. Yet we get some people at times, expatriates or visitors from US mission, government, German, bring us together, invite Kairaba, invite someone else from where, to talk about this conflict. We have no same language to talk about because we don't meet to discuss it. So this is why I was saying it's necessary for us to sit, as we need to challenge ourselves. At times we sense ourselves, by the way. When people say that like this platform is set up by the RPF, which is not right at all, which is not correct, because the government cannot struggle to have legitimate elections and then set up an illegitimate platform. So we sense ourselves that there are issues we can't touch, which is not true. For example, when we started engaging in land issues, people are saying, oh, how are you going to touch this? You are going to be crossed. But no, we are not. Nobody has ever questioned. When we have issues, we go to government ministries, we engage, we raise issues, we dialogue, and we are listened to. Our voice is listened. So even this one, we need really to push. Maybe, I hate to say that RGB need to organize us, but RGB needs to recognize that there is no civil society organized. They have to realize that platform does not recognize, represent civil society and challenge us more about it, work with us. I think it's an issue that needs combined efforts. I'm glad you recognize the importance of civil society's voice. It's needed in this conflict to give a position. I always see statements from DRC, civil society groups. When I was in Dublin, this conflict was on. And I remember I was invited because when I joined the campus, they were excited to see a Rwandese who would talk about these issues. And I sat on the same table with someone from DRC and we were exchanging, but I was talking, of course, as myself. So we need to encourage these talks here to give views of civil society. But we don't. Again, because we are too weak. I hate to say we are weak when I'm talking about ourselves, but it's a fact.
That's extremely sad, but hopefully, as where there's weakness, there's also room for growth. And I'm confident, we're all Rwandans, we are strong people. Eventually, I feel that there's opportunity for unity, there's opportunity for growth, and I'm sure eventually, maybe working with the new administration, the new RGB administration, some of these issues that you've discussed, that I was able to highlight in this discussion, they will start finding solutions for them. Because I fervently believe that there's a huge role for civil society. We have a very strong public sector. We have a growing private sector. Now, civil society needs to also become that, a stool. A stool is strong when there are 3 legs to the stool. That's when it's stable. And I feel that in our country, civil society, private sector, public sector, those are the stools that will create the opportunity for a Rwanda that is prosperous, that is growing, and that is just and fair. And so I wish to give you my support, anything that I can do to, keep having these conversations. I will use my platform here at the long form to highlight them. And obviously this is your first time here, but And we've spent a lot of time really talking about, some of the genesis and the terminology, but I would really like to have you back to discuss, like we started discussing today, some of the burning issues of the time, whether it is reproductive rights, criminal justice, land reform. And I'm sure there'll be lots of opportunities for us to have these conversations. So, Anne, thank you so much for coming on the program. I've learned a lot. I'm sure my listeners and viewers have learned as much. And I wish you and the entire civil society all the best. And thank you so much for spending your afternoon here with me. And I hope that you've enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Sanny. It's been a pleasure for hosting. In fact, I should say, from my experience here, you are the first person that is hosting about civil society. I've been asking, how come the universities are not engaging in this research in the area of civil society? So I'm very excited, and I'm very, very hopeful that the new administration in RGB also is going to engage. I heard during the elections recently for civil society platform, one of the officials was asking, where are the civil society organizations? This is very good. I'm very hopeful too that civil society is going to change, and there is a big potential for it to play a role because our government is willing, sees the importance of civil society, gives the right environment, and like in many other countries. So I'm very hopeful that with your support, which I appreciate very much, we are going to get there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed the conversation today, share your thoughts with us on our social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok.